we've reached the choose your own adventure part of this course because we're moving on to texturing, and like everything in Blender, there's 100 different ways you can tackle this. And a lot of people would work with Photoshop or maybe a program called Substance Painter at this point, which are great tools for texturing, but neither of these things are free. And I really want to keep this course using just Blender and all the free open source stuff that comes with it. The amazing thing about Blender is you can do everything in it. It's not necessarily the easiest way, but you can do everything without leaving the software. But I also just want to show people that do have access to Photoshop how easy it can be to texture. So if you've been following along, your model should look like this. If you've jumped in at this lesson or you've hit a problem, you can download this from my Patreon. You just need a free membership, so you just need to sign up, you don't have to pay anything, and you can access the files for this. So this is where we got to, and we're just going to go into our UV editing tab, and we'll close this image down. And I just want to select everything on the cabinet. So just go into object mode, tab, hit A to select everything, and you should see all the parts of the arcade machine. And because we're just dealing with the textures for this part of the machine, we can make this fill the space better. So if we unwrap it again, Blender's going to do a better job of filling the space. I'd just like to put a margin in here. Let's go like 0.035, see how that looks? There we go. It's just nice to have a little bit of space between all of our elements. And then if we click one of the vertices here and then hit the L key, we can select everything that's linked. And I just want to rotate this 90 degrees because this is the side of our cabinet, this is the back, and this is the top, and it kind of makes more sense to work square. And we're going to do the same thing with section here. Rotate 90 degrees. So that is this front part here. And we're going to rotate this part as well. So we're just going to drag a box around it and rotate 90 degrees. And actually this as well, because this is the inside of the screen. So we'll just select a vertex there, and hit L, and rotate 90 degrees. There we go. So you can see this is this part here, and it just makes sense for it to be that way around. So now if we hit UV and export UV layout, and we'll name this, I'm going to call it Arcade Cabinet UV, and we just want to set this to 4096 so it's nice and big. So if we go into Photoshop now and load up this file, you'll see that we have this nice transparent PNG with our guidelines on it, and we can fill this in. Let's give it a fill color, something like this. And I'm just going to quickly graffiti all over this to show you how it works. So we'll just make a new layer and put some squiggles in here. Beautiful. Okay, we're just going to turn off this top layer, and then if we save this now, we can save it as a PSD file because Blender can still work with PSD files. I'm just going to overwrite my file, you'll be making a new one. And we now go back to Blender and go into our shading editor, and we're going to connect it into... let's just make sure we're working on the right... we want to be on our base metal, not our black metal. There we go. So we're going to connect it into this section here. So if we make a new image texture, I went a little bit faster, let's just undo that. So Shift and A, image texture, and then we're going to connect the color up to like that. And then we hit open, and it should be this one. And you'll see, look at that, beautiful. So all of our little squiggles are now matched around. Job done, tutorial finished, everyone go home. So you can see now that in Photoshop, using this, you could build up all of your layers, you could bring in images and photos and textures, and you're just working on this flat kind of kit. And it's a nice, easy way to work. And the only thing you need to watch out for is to remember to turn that off in between. So if you've got Photoshop, off you go. But I'm going to teach you how to do it in Blender. So we'll get rid of that for now. And we're going to delete this image and make a new image texture. We're going to leave this hooked up, because you'll see that it's the reason that we made this material first is it kept all of my scratches in. And we're going to call this cabinet texture. And we're going to make this nice and big again. And we can turn off alpha, we don't need that. So just hit new image. And now if we go into texture paint, we'll just go back into this material. We should be able to just paint straight onto our image, and you can make the brush bigger and smaller with this radius tool like you would in Photoshop. And we can spin the camera around and we can squiggle, and it's actually much easier than doing that in Photoshop because you can immediately see what you're working on. If you try and paint on this, nothing will happen because that's using a different material, so it only affects the parts that we've UV mapped. And we can also paint on this side, so that I'll click on the back now. We can paint on the roof. Look at this impressive mouse control I've got. So that says hello, by the way. So that's cool. It's probably not what you came here to make. It's, you know, quite interesting in a sort of Keith Haring kind of way, but okay, so that's not what we're here to do. So we're going to delete this image and make a new one. So we'll go back to our shading tab and we'll get rid of that and hit new, and we've got a cabinet texture again. It's already set to the right size. And the next thing we need to do is go up here and go to external data, automatically pack resources, because like I mentioned before, Blender it links the files externally rather than saving them to the file, which is great, but then you have to manually remember to save your image every time you quit, and believe me, I forget all the time. So I'm going to go back to texture paint and we're going to flood fill this image. So I'll just reset this to default, and we can create a color here and like this, and then if we click anywhere in the UV map, it should flood fill. So we've got a base color here. What we want to do now is use an image to texture this side of the cabinet. So if we go to the brush tool here and make sure we're up at the top here, so the tool, which is a little screwdriver and a spanner, and we're going to change down here to texture, this one. I'm going to hit new, and confusingly our texture now becomes available in this panel down at the bottom. Blender, just doing Blender things. So if we click on open and we go to cabinet art, now if you follow the link in the description, it will take you to these elements that I put together for you. So we're going to choose cabinet side 1. You can see my beautiful artwork here. And if we go back to the brush tool at the top, and we're just going to change this to stencil. And now we have this image here. And if you right click, you can move it about. So right click and drag, you can move it about. So you might be starting to see where we're going with this. I just need to click that image aspect button to get the proportions right, because Blender assumes every image is going to be square. And as you can see, this isn't square. Now we can rotate the camera. And in fact, we could snap it to a side view like this. And then if we scale it up, so if you hold down the shift key and then right click, you can then drag. So we can sort of scale up. Oh, it's a bit sensitive. Okay, we're going to go slowly on this because it's proving to be very sensitive. And I'm just trying to get this artwork to sit somewhere like that. So it fit perfectly because it turns out I didn't do. In fact, I think this is the wrong side. So let's flip the view. There we go. That should fit better. Yeah, not so much better. So if we position it like this, and then make sure you've got you can make our brush bigger using the square bracket keys, or increasing the radius there. And then we just make sure it's set to white. If you move off, it will disappear, and then we can just paint this on. Okay. So you can see it's kind of filling in. And if you let go, it should now update on this side. So you can see the image is filling in. And we can use a nice big brush because we're viewing from the side. So it looks like we need to get a bit more on here. Okay, let's see how we're looking. So if we rotate the camera now, nice. We're just going to move our stencil out of the way. You can see that it's painted onto our texture. And if we zoom in, we should still have like our scratches. Yeah, you can see them there. Simple. Okay, so that's one way of doing it, painting 3D like that. I'm really pleased with how it looks. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side, and I've made another image because it won't line up otherwise. So go back down here, and then we click on this button here. click on the cross and then hit on open again. And we want cabinet side 2. And let's do the same thing but on this side, because we can do exactly the same thing. So shift and right click to scale it down, and to drag, and you just want it to kind of fill that space as best you can. And it's possible I haven't made the art exactly the right size, so apologies, but get the idea. We might need to do a little bit of work around to make this fit, but this will do for the sake of this example. And we can zoom in with the mouse wheel, and now we need to resize. So that's the only problem, is that your stencil doesn't resize as you work, and there is actually a good reason for that, and sometimes it's to your advantage, but it can be fiddly. Let's go with this for now. So we're going to do the same thing. One thing to really watch out for is make sure that your brush is set to white, because otherwise it will tint the design. So if you ever find it's not the colour that you expected, just check that your brush is set to the right size. So you should be seeing that you could, obviously I've created this entire design for you, but you could bring in different parts of photographs and layer them on, and we'll do that later on. So you'll see what I'm talking about. Just make sure you've got everything. It's a little bit hard to tell, but okay. And there we go. And we've got kind of a faded edge, but I actually quite like that. But this stencil is staying in place, so we can, there we go. Look at that. So that's the sides done. Looking nice. Pleased with that. And let's have a look at how we can do these parts, the inside of the screen, using the same element. So we don't need to make some more parts here. We're going to drag this up to here, and I want to use this section of the image, and then we're just going to brush in here. Always want it to be Bob Ross. Nice and relaxing. And then, so look, that's filled in like that. And we're going to do, I want to rotate this. So I always have to think about the key combination. So it's Control and then right click. And then I want to rotate. And I'm going to rotate to something like that, because we want it to line up like here. And then we're just going to do the same thing. Nice. And then we're going to hit Control and rotate and do the side like this. Cool. And just the base part to do. So Control and rotate. And let's pick up this bit. Perfect. And then I made a new image for the front. So we're going to click on that X, and then we're going to choose cabinet front. And this is facing the wrong way at the moment. So we're going to hit the tool button, and we're going to go back to this image aspect. And we're also going to hit reset transform. And it should be more the size we want. And then, so the front part, we might encounter a problem here. Let's find out. So I think this is the front. So let's see what happens if we paint this on. So that's actually this part. So let's try this part of the image, see if this is right. There we go. Now I actually think I want this to be higher up. So I'm going to undo all of this, and we're going to move it up so it's this part of the image. And maybe we're going to scale it up a little bit. So we just get the kind of road and this logo here. And let's make our brush nice and big, and just fill this in. And you can do this design however you want. You obviously don't have to use my assets. I might in fact go bigger still. So something like that. I don't want any of the car in, so we can just paint straight over it. There we go. That's what I had in mind. Okay, so we've got the bulk of the machine textured there. It's up to you what we want to do with the front. I actually don't mind that being flat, but we could bring in some of this road texture, this kind of softer gradient again. Just see how that looks. I think it's this one we were dealing with. Let's find out. Yep. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And I think we'll use the same thing for up here as well. which should be one of these, I think. So it's a little bit of trial and error to work out. Nope, it's not that. So this is the back, this is the front. Oh, is it this part here? See, it's just fun working stuff out, right? What we're going to do to find out where this panel is, we're actually going to paint on here. So let's just drag our stencil like this. Okay, so it's this part here. So in fact, let's do it in the 3D mode. So let's just position it like this, and we'll just drag our brush over. Cool. So we just got a little colour accent there. Nice. So that should be the bulk of the machine textured. And the next thing we're going to do is use the light box, and we can work differently on this. So we're going to change back into layer. And before we go any further, I actually want to go into shading, and if we just select cabinet texture here, I think we need to bring it up in this drop down here, cabinet texture 01. So you can see that's our flat image there. I just want to make sure that we hit save, and save that somewhere where you can find it again, just in case Blender doesn't package your artwork up for you, because it is very easy to lose parts. Great, so if we go back into the layout mode now, and make sure that we've selected our light box, we're going to make a new material here. So we're going to close this off and hit new, and then we're going to hit light box material, and we're going to go down to emission and click on the color button here and choose image texture and hit open, and there should be a header sign. And at the moment you're not going to see much, so we need to go back into UV editing, and let's just turn on our shading view, and we need to set this strength here to 1. In fact, let's set it to 5. There we go. You can see the image coming through now, but it's at the wrong angle, so we're going to rotate this 90 degrees, and then you can see we're stretched and squashed, and that's because, again, this image isn't square. So if we use this drop down and navigate down to header sign, and if we just use the unwrap tool again and rotate this now, we should be able to scale this up. And I actually just want this central part, so don't worry about the folded parts. Let's kind of get that looking. So it's a combination of looking at the left and the right, and we've got our header sign there, and I'm just going to connect our base color up to this as well, so it's using the same image. So we could do it here, but let's go to our shading view and use the graph to do it properly. So if we now drag the color to here, there we go. Whoop. Definitely don't want that button. Sculpting the whole future thing. So we're nearly done. Now I want to put an image inside the screen. So if we go back to our cabinet view, and we're going to make a new material. So first thing we need to do is go into edit mode and select these faces. I'm just going to turn off, let's go into this view and just zoom in so that we can select all of these. And go back to our materials button. We're going to make a whole new one here called screen, and hit assign. And if we just go back into our materials preview, so it should be white, and then we go into our shading view and make sure we've got it selected. Whoop. So we're going to add in an image texture again, and what we're actually going to use here, and again, I've made you one, but the next lesson I'm going to show you how to make your own animated game to put inside the arcade machine, but you might not want to do that. You might be fed up with this course by now. So I made this MP4 file, this video, And Blender can use videos the same way it uses textures. So we can drag this color in. And at the moment, there's some weird stuff going on. And I just want to set the frames to 400. And we'll go to UV editing. And we're going to change this to our video, which is comped arcade animation test. Now, this is a little bit weird size, but we're going to do this by hand. So G to drag it, S to scale, and I want to get some of this top scoreboard in like this. Let's just move it down a little bit so we're cool. So if we go back into layout mode now, nothing's going to happen at the moment. We just need to check our shading button. Just need to hit auto refresh and cyclic, so it will loop. And it should now. If we hit the space key, it's going to play the animation inside the screen. It's pretty cool. I made this daft little racing game, and I want this to glow as well. So we're going to use, because screens have lights coming from them, so we're going to connect that up to the color. I'm going to set that to 5. And there we go. So if we hit the space key, we can see our arcade machines animating. So we're nearly there, I think. One more thing I want to do is to put some glass inside the cabinet, and it'll only be a subtle effect, but it'll just add another detail, and it's something we didn't do earlier. So if we go to stay in layout mode, I want to come out by camera mode. I don't know why I'm working in that. And I hit the tab key with the arcade cabinet selected. And we're going to alt click on, in edge mode, we're going to alt click on this surface. So it's going to select all the edge of the screen. We're going to hit Shift and D to duplicate it, P to separate it, and then I'm going to select that screen. And I just want to come over to my modifiers and delete these two. And then alt tab in, hit A to select everything, and then F for face. And we've got this black screen, and I'm just going to push it back a little bit on the Y and scale it up a little bit. Great. So we've got glass, but you can't actually see anything. So we're going to go to our shading tab, and we're going to delete these materials, we don't want any of these, and hit new, and call this screen glass. So in Blender, you can make, there's loads of different ways of making glass, and there's also 2 different rendering engines. This is way more complicated than I want to get into now. So the way that we have to make glass using the current rendering engine is a little bit weird, but we're just going to go with it. So we're going to expand it out. If this isn't already expanded, expand that transmission and make the weight to 1. I'm going to set the roughness to really low. So this is like our glass surface, but you can't see through it. So we're going to make a mix shader here. So drag that from here and choose mix shader, and then connect that shader to the surface. And then we're going to, in fact, I just want to drag this to this one, and then from here, drag it away. And from this one, we're going to drag, we're going to choose transparent BSDF, which is the second one. And you can see now things are starting to become see-through, and we can drag this up and down. So it's just a case of playing around with the glass settings until you get them to where you want them to be. And I think something like that's about right. You can see this glass there, but it's not interfering with the image too much. Perfect, so they've got this nice little depth effect now. Looking really nice. So again, you could call this done here. I just want to show you a couple of extra techniques for adding details into the image. So I'm just going to save this. And also, just good habit, go to image and save all images, just to make sure that everything we've been working on is saving as we go. So we're going to go back to this material here, which is our base metal. And I'm going to add in another, let's paint straight onto here to start with, to show you one way of working. So we'll go to texture paint, and we're going to load in a new texture down here. And I should have this kind of graffitied image here. So if we scale this down a bit, so let's say we wanted to put a bit of graffiti down and put on that here, like this. And just like Photoshop, you can set your blend modes here. So if we set this to screen, the black part of the image will pass through and the white will show up. This will make more sense when we do it. So let's scale it up, make sure we've got white selected, and we're just going to kind of paint in these parts. And you'll see it's cutting through now because it's brightening up. So just kind of choose the bits of the image that you want to bring in. And if we take our stencil away, we've got like a graffitied part of the image, so that's kind of cool. Let's do something on the other side. Here we want to bring in this little like weird hand sticker thing, so we're going to do the same technique. Just going to trace over the parts we want to bring through. Cool. So that's cool, but it's kind of destructive. Maybe we can just tag the back. Just put a big old tag on the back. Just on a rough area, this arcade machine. Let's bring some of this stuff through. Okay, you might not like that. I don't think I like it. Let's delete it, but I want to show you that we could do that. Okay, and so that's one way, but we're painting straight onto the image, which is kind of destructive. So something else I like to do is to make these sticker sheets. So we go into layout mode. So I want to put some stickers onto the design, as if somebody's kind of come in and put stickers on the side of a machine. We're going to make a new plane, new bit of geometry for this. So Shift and A, mesh plane, and we're going to move it to the side and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees like this. Hit S to scale. And we're going to make a new material, so we're going to call this sticker material. And click on the circle next space color and choose image texture. And we're going to open it. And let's work with this image. Okay, so we're going to rotate this 90 degrees. Let's try doing this properly. So we're going to rotate it on the X 90 degrees. And let's solo this with the backspace key. And then if we flip the camera like this, what we can do is slice up this image and pick out some stickers and it will stay mapped on. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If we hit into edit mode, and then we're going to use the knife tool, which is never the thing that I think it is. It's got a weird icon. Where are you? There we go. That's the knife tool. If we put a cut in here, and then you can just kind of click your way around. So, and then hit enter to close it up, and it will make the geometry to cut that out. Let's do one up here as well. Anything else that looks interesting? We should really do a round one, but I don't want to sit here and click everything. Let's do this one. Let's see what happens. So we're just going to make kind of roughly around it because the detail that we're working on. We can always smooth this out. And then hit enter. I think that should be enough, unless there's anything else that looks cool. Let's have this one. This looks cool, so we'll just cut this out. And then we're going to go into face mode and move out of the knife tool, and we just want to shift click on each of these that we've cut out. So you've got to remember what you cut out now. Easier said than done. And then we're going to select invert and hit X, choose faces. So now we've got 4 stickers and they're already mapped. And all we need to do is, if we select everything and then hit P, we can separate by loose parts. So now each one of these is selectable on its own, and we can push it back, position it on the cabinet however we want. So you might need to reset your origin. So object set origin to geometry, and in fact if we select all of these we'll do the same thing. Object set origin to geometry, makes things much easier. And now we're rotating around. So push it up back until it's on the surface. So I'll put one there like this. Let's bring one over to the front. So rotate it through 90 degrees, that's square. So again, you get the idea with this, and it's completely up to you now how you want to customize. Go and find some images that have graffiti and stickers. Maybe you don't want any of this stuff going on your machine. But all these little details just help to sell the final render as being believable. Let's put that like on the number plate. And then bring this one onto the front. So, oops, making a light mess of this. Rotate your camera to make your life easier. Let's put this one down here. I think it's actually facing the other way. So we could rotate the whole thing to 180 degrees. There we go. And then we're just going to push that back. And if your edges are a little bit untidy, you can just slide them. So use 2 Gs to slide them and just neaten them up like this. If you drag them, then the UV map will get distorted, but if you slide them, it stays correct. That's a little tip. Cool. So one last thing, and I keep saying this, but one last thing just to add a bit of interest and to make these look a bit more believable. So if we click on the shading tab now, and I want to use the image to also affect the roughness. So if we drag this over and make a new color ramp, and then we connect that to the roughness, and then we're going to shift click on here. So let's just see how our stickers look. So it should just give like a bit of shininess, a bit of interesting detail. And we could also put a slight bump map on it too. So we'll drag out color, choose bump, and we're going to connect that to height, not strength. Set strength really low, connect that to normal. And again, it's very subtle, we actually need to push this back a little bit. But you can just see it gives like a little bit of depth to the sticker. And again, all of these things will kind of catch the light when the camera's moving. So you can see here it looks really nice because it's just got like a little bit of extra detail, feels more printed. And I think we're done. So I'm going to do one more lesson where we animate the scene and one lesson where we build the video games go inside it. So it's kind of up to you which ones you want to do at this point. It's nice for me, right? But yeah, well done. We've got a fully textured arcade machine and we did it all in Blender, unless you cheated and used Photoshop. Okay, see you in the next lesson.